Have you ever felt an unseen presence watching over you, silently steering your steps even when you couldn't sense it? Picture a force that has journeyed with you from birth, shielding you, guiding you, and alerting you to hidden dangers. In the ancient Igbo worldview, this presence is known as Chi, a sacred spirit regarded as one's spiritual twin. It is said that Chi molds your destiny, shapes your choices, and whispers cautions when the road ahead turns perilous. But what unfolds when someone dares to dismiss these divine messages? What happens when a person resists the spirit that has always been close? This tale follows Ikenna Okafor, a renowned palm wine tapper celebrated for both his generosity and unmatched craft. Despite his honor and status, Ikenna ignored the subtle signs and vivid dreams through which his chi tried to warn him. Messages of a grim fate awaited if he failed to alter his path. Yet blinded by pride and bound by custom, he chose defiance. What came next was a destiny that shattered not only his life, but the hearts of those who cherished him. So sit back, because this is the history of Africa. Before we begin, I know many of you are joining from across the globe, connected by a shared admiration for Africa. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and I'll be there engaging with you. And if you're enjoying the journey, hitting that like button and subscribing would mean everything. Now let's return to the story. In Igbo tradition, Chi is not merely an idea. It is a profound spiritual presence that journeys with each soul from the moment of birth until the final breath. Known as a divine counterpart, Chi embodies fate, destiny, and the guiding influence of ancestors. It serves as protector, mentor, and ever-present companion. The Igbo believe that through Chi, the spirit realm speaks to the living and charts the direction of life. For Ikenna Okafor, this was not just cultural lore. It was the heartbeat of his existence. In a tranquil Igbo settlement surrounded by endless palm groves lived Ikenna, the most skilled palm wine tapper of his time. His mastery over the tall trees was legendary, a sacred craft handed down through countless generations of the Okafor family. His father had trained him since childhood, instilling the knowledge of tapping with patience and care. Now grown, Ikenna carried on the tradition, serving his people with devotion and unmatched precision. To them, palm wine was not simply a drink. It was more than just a drink. It was a sacred link to the ancestors, to the soil beneath their feet, and to the divine forces above. It was a living legacy, a craft passed down through bloodlines, binding Ikenna to the memory of forefathers who had survived by mastering these towering palms. To the villagers, Ikenna was not simply a wine tapper. He was a guardian of tradition, a man whose skilled hands drew the sweet lifeblood of the palm tree. His devotion to his work shone brightly. With a generous spirit, he often shared extra portions of wine with the elders and those less fortunate. Beside him stood his devoted wife, Inki, who supported his labor while raising their 5 children. His mother, Omalicha, constantly reminded him of the sacred weight of their spiritual customs. She had been the first to explain Chi, the divine twin assigned at birth, a spirit meant to guide and shield each person throughout life. Yet as the years rolled on, Ikenna's confidence slowly shifted, hardening into pride, and pride began to drift dangerously close to arrogance. Ikenna began to believe that nothing, not even his Chi, could challenge his strength. He had conquered the palm trees after all. What danger could possibly reach him? One night, as he rested, a dream overtook him with striking clarity. In it, he stood before the tallest palm tree in the village, the same tree his father had once scaled with pride. But the scene was twisted. The trunk dripped with moisture and furious winds roared around him, shaking the tree with unnatural violence. Out of the storm, his chi revealed itself, a radiant, spectral figure, both intimate and unearthly. Ikenna, the spirit whispered, its voice urgent yet gentle. Darkness lies ahead. Leave the palms or they will destroy you. Ikenna jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the warning ringing in his ears. He brushed it aside, dismissing the vision as nothing more than a troubling dream, born from fatigue and toil. Though he had been taught that Chi often spoke through dreams, he refused to yield. He was strong, he was skilled, and this was his family's sacred inheritance. Surely nothing could harm him. The next morning, as Ikenna readied himself for another day among the palms, his mother, Omalicha, approached with unease written across her face. She was an elder, deeply rooted in the mysteries of the spirit world, and she too had been shaken by visions in her sleep. Ikenna, she began, her voice quivering with urgency. Your chi came to me as well. It warns us both. You must stop. The trees no longer welcome you. Ikenna laughed softly, resting his hand on her shoulder. Mother, you worry needlessly. Kai is always present in dreams. They are only warnings, nothing more. I have climbed these palms all my life. Nothing will harm me. His wife Inky overheard their exchange and stepped forward, eyes heavy with worry. Ikenna, please, she whispered. I too have dreamt of these warnings. Your chi seeks to shield you. This is no small matter. We are your family and I cannot bear the thought of losing you. But Ikenna stood firm. I am the finest tapper in this village. None can rival my skill. Dreams will not bring me fear. Pride filled his chest as he brushed away the concerns of both mother and wife, dismissing them as needless anxiety. He returned to the palms with renewed determination, convinced nothing could ever harm him. Yet the dreams persisted, haunting him night after night. Night after night, the dreams grew darker and more relentless. In one vision, Ikenna saw himself plummeting from a towering height, jagged palm fronds slicing into his skin as searing pain engulfed him. Through the torment, the voice of his chi grew desperate. Ikenna, hear me. A great fall awaits. Change your path or you will suffer deeply. Yet still he refused to listen. The palms were his lifeblood, his heritage. How could he abandon them now? To turn away would mean betraying the ancestors who had entrusted this sacred work to him. And yet signs of danger multiplied. His once reliable AKA, the climbing harness, began to show wear. The ropes frayed, the knots loosened, but Ikenna ignored it all, confident that his strength and mastery would keep him safe. One evening, after a long day of tapping, he sat with his wife and children as the sun dipped low, painting the village in golden light. A heaviness tugged at his heart, though he brushed it aside. He had a family to provide for, a legacy to protect. Surely nothing could stop him. But when his gaze met his wife Inky's eyes, he saw fear shimmering within them. Ikenna, she whispered, please listen. Chai is not merely a dream. It is your guardian. Do not turn away from its warnings. He smiled faintly, though sorrow lingered in his expression. I cannot stop. This tradition is sacred. I will never forsake it, no matter the cost. And so Ikenna pressed on, steadfast in the belief that his heritage and pride outweighed the warnings of his chi. One dawn, as the first light spilled across the rolling green hills of the village, he awoke from yet another troubling dream. Sitting upright, his thoughts churned in restless waves. He turned to glance at his wife Inky, still sleeping peacefully at his side. A strange heaviness lingered in his chest, but he forced it away. Today, he told himself, he would climb again. He had given his word to Madame Ade, an elderly widow of the village, to help her gather palm nuts from the tallest tree, the very same one he had scaled countless times before. His resolve was firm, though his heart nudged quietly by chi carried unease. As the sun climbed higher, spreading golden light over the groves, Ikenna prepared for the day as he always had, fastening his AKA, the trusted harness he believed would guard him as he ascended the towering palms. The morning sky was spotless, and the village thrummed with life. Women pounded yam in steady rhythm, children's laughter bounced, and birds called from the palm crowns. Yet beneath that bright morning, a heavy hush seemed to settle over Ikenna. His wife Inky noticed at once. She had always been sensitive to the small shifts in his spirit, and today the strain was obvious. She pushed the woven mat aside and sat up, worry etched across her features. Ikenna, she said softly but with firmness, I dreamed again last night. Ikenna paused in his preparations. The palm wine gourd paused its clink in his hands. Another dream? He asked, a faint smile lifting the corner of his mouth that failed to reach his eyes. You have dreamed this too often, Inky. It means nothing, he added. But Inky shook her head, the lines of concern deepening on her brow. The spirits are trying to speak to us, my love, and this is not the first time. It is not only my dream. It came to you as well, she insisted. A hush fell over the compound as if the palms held their breath, and the worry between them deepened. Ikenna, who had spent his life shrugging off such portents, let out a soft laugh. You know I cannot abandon the palms, he said. They belong to my father, my grandfather, and all those who came before us. This is my inheritance, my life. I will not forsake it over dreams. Inky rose and reached for his hand, her voice steady but urgent. But your life, my love, matters more than any custom. Your chi, the spirit that walks beside you, speaks for your safety. Can you not hear its whispers in your sleep? Each climb takes you ever higher, and with every step you edge closer to a fall that may end everything. Ikenna withdrew his hand, a shadow passing over his face. I hear nothing, he replied, frustration shading his tone. "They are only dreams, Inky. You worry too much." Still, beneath his words, something knotted in his chest. His chi was not only summoning him in visions, it sounded in the waking world too, in the tightness of his wife's plea, the sorrow in his mother's glance, and the low murmurs of elders who had watched him grow. And so, in spite of every plea born from love and caution, Ikenna pressed on, readying himself for the ascent that fate had marked as his final. As he walked toward Madame's home, the awareness of countless watchful eyes seemed heavier than ever. Villagers greeted him with the usual smiles and words of respect, yet beneath it all hung a silence thick with dread. It felt as though the very soil beneath his feet whispered for him to turn back. But Ikenna would not bend. Superstition and fear had no place in his resolve. Reaching the towering palm, he found Madame waiting, her aged hands folded tightly before her. She lifted her gaze toward him, her eyes shimmering with unease though her lips remained still. She had witnessed his climbs countless times, yet something in her silence carried a weight beyond words. At last she spoke, her voice tender but edged with forewarning. "Take care, my son. The winds are shifting. Do not take this climb as you would the others." Ikenna gave a short nod, though he felt none of Madame's worry. "It's only a tree," he muttered. "Nothing I haven't done before." Then he cinched the AKA around his waist and gripped the familiar ropes, beginning his steady ascent up the towering palm. Higher and higher he climbed, each rung lifting him into thinner air where the earth below grew small and distant. Still, the shadow of his visions clung to him. The nightmare of plummeting seemed to trail every upward step. The breeze thickened, stirring the fronds into an uneasy whisper, and he sensed a subtle change in the atmosphere. When he glanced at the harness, the ropes looked more worn than he had remembered, a few fibers frayed at the edges. Suddenly his chi manifested again, but not just within the secrecy of sleep. It stood before him, a luminous double outlined in pale light, unmistakably his reflection and not. "Ikenna," the spirit called, its tone edged with panic. "You stand on the brink. Do not ignore this warning. A fall is coming. The ancestors will not shield you if you defy their warnings. Abandon the palms before they claim you. Seek another way to live." The plea of his chi, laced with sorrow and urgency, pierced Ikenna's mind. For the first time his steady rhythm faltered. He glanced down, the dizzying stretch of earth so far beneath him, and a flicker of doubt cracked through his resolve. But just as quickly, the radiant spirit dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the heavy pull of bloodlines and duty. The weight of his father's craft pressed on him like an anchor, binding him to the tree. With clenched fists and a sharp breath, he forced his fear aside. "I am no child," he muttered under his breath, steadying himself with pride. "This is nothing." Yet as he neared the treetop where clusters of ripe palm nuts swayed in the breeze, another vision seized him. No longer the gentle glow of his divine double, it was a shadowed form draped in darkness, its voice rolling through his skull like thunder. "Ikenna, you cannot outrun destiny." The world lurched violently as a sharp, dreadful snap cut through the morning air. The rope had given way. The worn Akba, weakened by countless climbs, betrayed Ikenna at last. In that instant, reality slowed, the wind shrieking like a chorus of spirits as his body tore free of the tree. He tumbled helplessly, limbs thrashing, the earth rushing upward with merciless speed. For a heartbeat, everything froze. His body hung weightless in the void, his thoughts consumed by the bitter truth. Every warning, every dream, every whispered plea he had cast aside was now crashing down with him. The storm of wind roared in his ears, taunting his pride. And then, impact. A brutal crack split the silence as his body struck the ground, the sound reverberating like a curse across the village. The towering palm that had once been his companion loomed above, no longer a symbol of legacy but a monument to his arrogance and his refusal to heed the chi that had shadowed him since birth. Around him, the village stilled into silence. Madame, frozen at the base of the tree, let out a sharp cry as she stumbled forward, but the tragedy had already unfolded. Ikenna lay crumpled on the earth, his body still, his spirit gone in an instant. The silence that followed was heavy, until the news tore through the village like fire in dry grass. Men and women rushed to the scene, their expressions twisted with horror and grief, disbelief etched across every face. The elders gathered apart, speaking in low, mournful tones, for they understood. This was not an ordinary death, but the grim consequence of a man who had turned away from the voice of his chi. The weight of his fall would not rest on him alone. The entire village would carry it. Enki, breathless and trembling, pushed through the throng, her heart hammering with dread. When her eyes fell upon her husband's lifeless body, her world collapsed. "Ikenna," she whispered, collapsing to her knees, her voice breaking into sobs. "No, this cannot be real." Her trembling hand brushed his face, cold beneath her touch, and the finality of death shattered her spirit, leaving her hollow and broken. Her deepest fear had finally become reality. The man she loved was gone. At her side, Omalicha, Ikenna's mother, stood frozen in sorrow. She had begged him to listen, prayed that her dreams were false, but every warning she carried in her heart had come true. Now her silence spoke louder than any words. Grief was all that remained. The villagers mourned too, their lament not only for the man but for the bitter lesson carved into his death, the irreversible cost of defying one's chi. Around the fallen body, the elders formed a solemn circle, their chants hushed, their faces carved with reverence and sorrow. Then Izuku, the oldest among them, stepped forward. His voice, steady yet heavy with the weight of wisdom, rose above the crowd. "This is the price," he declared. "The price of closing one's ears to the guidance of the chi. The chi is not a silent shadow at our side. It is our sacred guardian, the voice that sustains balance between existence and the end. When its guidance is dismissed, when its signs are ignored, sorrow follows swiftly. The unseen forces have delivered their judgment, and now their lesson must be absorbed." Inchi, eyes swollen with grief, lifted her gaze toward the elder. "What path remains for us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "My companion is gone. My children stand without a father. How can we endure this emptiness?" Elder Natuk Wu rested a weathered hand upon her shoulder, his expression carved with sorrow. "Show your children the way of Ki, Kachi. Teach them to heed its voice, to walk in harmony with it. Their father's name will endure through them. But they must also learn that balance is sacred, and arrogance blinds us to the wisdom of the spirits." The villagers drifted away in silence, yet a crushing heaviness lingered. Ikenna's death was a wound carried by more than one heart. Life's fragility revealed itself once more, showing the fragile balance between destiny and choice. Ikenna's fall from the tall palm was not mere misfortune. It was the price of silencing the voice of his ki, the spiritual twin that had always walked with him since birth. As twilight deepened and stretched shadows across the village earth, Nikichi knelt beside her husband's still body. Her tears flowed quietly, her heart pierced with grief, yet within her sorrow grew a solemn clarity. Ikenna had rejected the counsel of his kui, but she vowed she would never commit the same error. She would listen. She would honor the sacred voices. That night, the cries of mourning filled the air. Yet beneath them pulsed a thread of determination. The village had lost a husband, a father, a son. But through his death, a truth had been carved into memory. In Igbo belief, chi is more than guardian. It is a person's spiritual counterpart, shaping destiny from cradle to grave, shielding from danger, and whispering truth when it must be heard. To neglect the kui is to abandon harmony, severing the divine bond between the human soul and the eternal realm. Ikenna's fall was not simply the result of defiance, it was the price of neglecting the sacred bond with his chi. His life became a living warning that pride, though often celebrated in tradition, can blind us to the whispers of the divine. Chi does not force, it shields, it guides, but when its counsel is silenced, chaos takes its place. For the villagers, his death became more than grief. It became a parable. No matter how skilled or respected, every soul remains bound to fate's delicate thread. Ikenna's memory was no longer tied to the palm wine he once tapped, but to the wisdom he left behind, the need for humility, the urgency of listening, and the truth that tradition demands reverence, never arrogance. His fall reminded all that we walk not alone. Our chi shadows each step, binding us to a greater universe where destiny and spirit are forever entwined. Pride blinds, but heeding the divine, no matter how faint its call, is the truest strength. As we reflect on Ikenna Okafor's story, consider your own path. Have you ignored a quiet warning? Have you let pride silence wisdom? Which African myths would you like me to uncover next? Share in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more journeys into the timeless world of African mythology.